thanks for joining us. We're in the last week of an election campaign and there are competing inquiries before Victoria's anti-corruption body. Either side of politics caught up with it, no satisfactory outcomes. Is this a cautionary tale for a federal anti-corruption body?
Oh, look, I don't know what they'll do federally. They're saying they're going to introduce a body. I'm not opposed to it. I think it's a good idea. As long as the body has teeth and as long as it is genuinely independent. I can't remember ever a government going into an election when in fact there are, I think, 4 matters before our IBAC which either involve the Premier and or his government, and the public have no idea what the subject matters are, let alone what the findings might be. You might remember in New South Wales, Barry O'Farrell had to resign over a bottle of wine. His successor, or a couple later, had to resign over a relationship with another member of Parliament. And here we've got 4 IBAC inquiries into corruption, and the public have no idea what they're about, no idea what the result will be, and we won't find out until after the election. So what an extraordinary situation that's got to be.
And of course there is an inquiry going back the other way involving the opposition leader's office. It's just totally unsatisfactory, isn't it?
Well, that's just been thrown in this week, or end of last week, by the Electoral Commission, who seem to be playing very much a political game, and you've got to call into question their independence. But yes, you're right, it has been referred to IBAC. Again, an extraordinary situation to have occurred a few days out from an election.
Look, it is an extraordinary campaign in many ways. To have Daniel Andrews now associating his opponents with the term Nazi, that certainly shows a high degree of desperation, doesn't it?
Yes, I think they are desperate. Can I just say to you, I have been very worried for a long time, not so much in Australia, but certainly in America and other parts of the world, where in fact we see the growing ingredient of hate politics, where politicians are deliberately trying to divide. So in America, you've seen actions against the blacks, the Southerners. You're now seeing it against people, many of whom are born in America, but of Chinese origin, because Mr. Trump has blamed China for COVID, etc., etc. Hate politics is very, very dangerous, and it is absolutely unacceptable. And the very fact that Labor here in Victoria is now using that term for political advantage is just unacceptable. I mean, I can argue against Labor on policies, some policies, not all, some I agree with. But I don't and never will agree with the introduction of hate politics, because I just think that is so destructive. Hate is such a waste of energy, and if hate is allowed to continue, it could have awful ramifications. And we are here in Victoria a very strong multicultural society. So for the Labor Party, using that term is almost a matter in itself that should be referred to a higher body.
There was, of course, the horrible language used against Daniel Andrews, the reference to red mist. But I think and that should be called out by everybody. But the problem here is, as you say, Daniel Andrews and Labor then used that to turn it against their opponents, their main opponents, the Liberal Party, and accuse them of being associated with Nazis and bigotry.
Yes, it's not a very attractive campaign, this I can tell you. But I do believe, and I have for a long time, this election is not about Labor versus Coalition or Labor versus the Greens. This election is on one issue only, and that is Daniel Andrews and his style of government, his personality, his refusal to actually answer questions about a whole range of things, perhaps the most important being when he appeared before the inquiry into our hotel quarantine situation here, which was a disaster during COVID, which cost 801 lives. When he was asked who was the person who authorised giving the contract for the security to a New South Wales firm, he and his ministers and his senior bureaucrats all gave the same answer: we can't remember. That is what they had been briefed to answer. Now, the inquiry, headed up by an ex-judge of the family court, totally inappropriate for this, what should have been a criminal investigation, did not follow up and say to Mr. Andrews, well, I expect you now to go away, find out who actually gave that instruction, and then come back here to the inquiry. So Daniel Andrews then changed the agenda, and without notice, he blamed his health minister in the inquiry, and she had to resign from Parliament. So Daniel put himself and his own political interests not only ahead of his colleague who served him loyally, but he put himself ahead the families of the 801 people who lost their lives because he controlled the operation of hotel quarantine.
Daniel Andrews,
this is not an election Labor-Liberal.
But Daniel Andrews is a strong character, a strong leader. Disagree with his policies and politics as I might, you can't escape the fact that he's a strong leader. You were the last very strong leader of Victoria, so you would know a bit about this. Do you think that when you have such a strong character in that leadership position, that voters can turn against them quite sharply?
There's no doubt about that. I have been predicting that there will be a change of government next Saturday for some months now. The great difference between my administration and Daniel's administration, I worked within the Westminster system. The Westminster system here has been trashed since 2014, when Labor used public money through the red shirts to gain an electoral advantage. And since then, that hubris has continued. So yes, we may have been a strong government. We had an agenda. People may have disagreed or agreed with our policies. But we worked within the Westminster system. We were accountable. We gave answers. We didn't rule as one man. We never shut down the state. We never stopped children going to playgrounds. So there is a difference. Yes, there's nothing wrong with strong, collegiate governments, leaders, and organisations, people with them. What is wrong is where there is a leader who acts alone, controls the agenda, sacks his ministers to protect himself, and treats the public as though they exist to serve him rather than he serve the public.
Let me get you, Jeff Kennett, finally to give a bit of an assessment of the election promises on offer here. At one end, you've got some grand promises where you're pitting infrastructure in a suburban rail link against hospital upgrades. But on the other, you've got this deliberate pitch by the Andrews government towards women, including handing out free tampons. Now, is this sort of election giveaway going to work for him?
Well, who knows? We'll wait and see on Saturday. Can I say, though, because of Daniel's decision to put infrastructure ahead of every other policy issue in the state, and all those infrastructures are running late and behind time and costing billions of dollars, he has generated a debt of close to $200 billion, which we have no capacity, none, to repay in the short term. Secondly, as you mentioned, the things that the public expect from their government: good health services, ambulance services, good education, and even roads. The condition of Victorian roads are breaking down on whichever road you travel. So they have made a priority. And if you happen to live outside of metropolitan Melbourne, not only do you get nothing and your roads are deteriorating, but you are going to be equally responsible for this enormous debt, which is greater than New South Wales, Queensland and Tasmania added together. Never has a state
I've got to chuck
level of debt.
I've got to chuck in one more question, Jeff Kennett. You've got such a strong, clear, cut-through message there about this election. Are you disappointed that Matthew Guy hasn't been able to deliver it that strongly?
No, look, everyone's different, as you know, and opposition leaders is a hell of a job. I was there for 10 years off and on. You don't get many plaudits, and the press always go with the government of the day, because the government of the day are the only ones who can deliver. The only point I would make, though, and I'm very frustrated, given what we were able to do in the 90s in restoring Victoria to be a wonderful, active, happy place, is to see the breakdown of the Westminster system, to see the debt levels. In a way, I very much regret I didn't put my hand up to stand for this election. And if I had stood, just as a member, I think my policy would have been to say this: I'm not going to promise any more that's going to add to our debt. I'm going to repair the damage. As Premier, I will take responsibility for health. The condition of our health services requires immediate attention, and it comes from the top. Now, Daniel Andrews was Health Minister for a number of years before he became Premier. So he's had 8 years plus 4 years as Health Minister, and the whole system has run down. And because I'm so worried about the level of debt and the implications that's going to have on my children, but particularly my grandchildren, I thought the way to create a difference in this election was to go in promising good, open, honest government, a restoration of the principles that we've all grown up with, and to tackle the things that matter most. And they are our health systems, our education system, and our roads. And I think the public would have loved it without having to go around either party promising billions and billions of dollars, which whoever wins is only going to continue to add to our debt.
Jeff Kennett, sadly it's too late for you to nominate for this election, but thanks so much for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you. It's probably I'm only saying that now because I know I can't, so good luck.
Cheers.